I've lost track of the amount of times that this question has come up with clients. We all love Notion AI meeting notes. They're great. They summarize. We don't have to use another tool. But the big question that comes up is, how do we get our checklist items into our task database? Today, I'm going to show you how to do exactly that with Notion's custom agents and take a look at some added functionality to get the most out of our agent. If we haven't met before, I'm Dave, also known as a Notion coach, and I run a consultancy called Workcraft Labs, where we help teams work smarter with Notion. So here's the issue we're trying to tackle today. We have our meeting notes. We could see that it grabbed a full transcript if we have any notes, but more importantly, the summary, giving us what we talked about in the meeting. So we have some things that we covered, but then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we have our next steps. This is simple checklist items, so we can mark these as done as we go along. The issue is, like many teams, we have many different meetings happening at the same time. And unless we go back into each individual meeting page, a lot of these could get lost, or we're finding ourselves having to copy and paste these into our task database, which means that it's very likely some things are falling through the cracks. So in this video, we're tackling a few things. Number one, setting up our instructions page. This is what we're going to use for a custom agent to reference. We're also talking about why we're separating that out on its own page rather than just adding it to the instructions in our new custom agent page. Secondly, we're going to get into some customizations when it comes to what's triggering the automation, what model we're using, and most importantly, what pages and databases it has access to. And lastly, we're going to update our meeting page template just so that we could confirm and make sure that all those tasks are getting brought into our task database, that they're getting connected to the right project or area. And if there's anything that's brought in that doesn't make sense as a task, we can just quickly delete those. With that said, let's jump in. So we're in a meeting page within a meetings database. A couple properties that I want to call out. First, we have attendees, meeting URL, and calendar URL. These are brought in via a separate automation. You technically don't need these. If you're working with clients, this is a relation. The property that we do want to have is connecting this meeting to a project. This is so that as we're creating tasks, if a meeting is tied to a project, the task is also getting assigned to that project, so that if you have views where you're grouping tasks by project, or you have views in Notion Calendar, you want to make sure that those tasks that are getting added don't just end up in no man's land and they're actually visible wherever you have views of your task database. Other than that, we have some other properties that we're not going to need for this demo. And then lastly, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we have a linked view of our task database. This is filtered to only show tasks related to this meeting so that we're not sifting through a bunch of tasks. There are teams that it's pretty common to have a second or third tab where we may be grouping tasks by project or by department. So that's always an option. But for this demo, we're just going to have the simple task database view. Next up, we're going to switch gears to our instructions page. Now, I'm going to open a database called Agents and open this Get Tasks from Meetings instruction page. A couple things to know. You might be wondering, why not just add these directly to the custom agent? I have automations running across Notion, Relay, OpenClaw that are all doing slightly different things, and in some cases are overlapping with each other. So this is really just a way to organize what are all of the things that are up and running in the background, so that as I'm making changes, I know that they're all living in one place. So let's open this full screen here. In the instructions page, I want to just highlight a few that you may or may not want to change, but at the very top, this is giving a general purpose of why this is running, what is it doing. Identity and style, this is taken from a general guide, but we may or may not need these, but just for extra context. When to run this automation, we're going to set this up at the custom agent level, but just as a backup, notating that here. And then if we go further down on the page, we're getting into what exactly we're creating. So we're creating a task in our task database. And then here, a couple other associated databases. We're taking tasks from meeting notes within the meetings database. If it's tied to a project, we want to make sure we have access to that project's database. In my case, we're also looking at the client and areas. This is pretty much departments, although you probably don't need those two. Next thing, quick do's and don'ts, things like making sure that if somebody on the team already logged a task that has a similar name or is from the same meeting, to not duplicate tasks. We don't want to bombard our database with a ton of new things that are either already there or not super relevant. And just making sure that the agent's not kind of filling in gaps where we don't have that information, like who a task is assigned to or what the due date is, making sure that the data that we have is accurate. In this example, we're getting into populating the due date based on if we mention a next check-in. This is also something that's kind of more optimized for my workflow, where if I'm checking in with clients weekly and we're setting up that date and time during the meeting, I want to make sure that the tasks that we talk about are due prior to that meeting, just as a reminder. And then if I go back into Notion Calendar and I'm kind of time blocking for those tasks, making sure that things don't fall through the cracks. Next, let's head to our agents section and we're going to create a new agent here. Great thing about this is if you're just getting started and want to explore how you might use agents, applying some of the recommendations like weekly project update or Q&A helper helps to not have to start from zero and can maybe kind of tweak it or tinker with some of the agent templates so you get a better feel for how you might use them. In our case, we're going to start with a blank custom agent here. So let's let that load. You'll notice we get this side panel opening up along with the chat window for our agent. A lot of this will look similar to Notion AI. The only difference is each custom agent has their own page with their history of along with custom instructions. So this is the big unlock. If you were a Notion AI power user, you were probably setting up sub pages with specific instructions that you then had to tag if you're doing things like creating content or reporting on projects. This simplifies all that quite a bit because we get to get more granular with how we're customizing it. So first thing I'm going to do is in the instructions, I'm just going to say refer to this page for instructions. I'm going to say get tasks from meetings here. So that way, if I open this in a new tab, it's referencing exactly that instructions page. In the future, if you're making edits to those instructions, you can know where to find them. This is really important for teams where we might have several agents, some of which are company-wide, some are for specific teams. So having that all in one place makes it a lot easier for our workspace admin to kind of keep these up to date and make sure that they're useful. Okay, we're going to revisit the triggers in a second because I want to go down here to the next part. A couple of things that we're going to be able to customize. Number one, you could turn on or off web access. Because we're only looking at information within our meeting notes, we're going to leave that off. And then within the Notion section, here's where we want to give our custom agent access to databases. The very first one is we want to make sure it can access our meetings database. We're going to turn on can edit content. The next one we're going to turn on is our tasks. Definitely want to have can edit access for tasks as well. And then we could see that it already has the instructions page. It can edit that as well. If we're chatting with our custom agent and then we give it advice on, hey, update this part of the instructions, it could go in, update that instructions page without you having to open it. A couple other areas that we want to give it access to is projects. So we're going to make sure we get the database and not a dashboard. And then in my case, we're going to give it access to clients and areas, which are basically like departments. And then here, we're just going to turn on can edit. If it's adding relations, we want to make sure it doesn't get tripped up. If there are other pages that you want to reference, not sure what they would be, then you would continue to add access to those pages as well. If we go down to the model, I'm going to select Opus 4.6. You can keep it on auto. If it's very manual, repetitive tasks, you might not need the power of like the latest model. In this case, I'm using Opus 4.6 for everything, but that's a personal preference thing. And then down here, allow list URLs. This is if the custom agent is browsing the web, but you want to give it more guidance, you could set a list of websites so that it doesn't get lost when it starts running. Now back at the top, when we get into what is triggering our agent to start getting up and running with this process, we have a few that are on by default. So if you have a new chat with our custom agent or when it's mentioned, but we're going to add our own and we're going to look for when a property is updated in a database. So here we're going to look for our meetings database and we're going to say when the status is set to done, automatically get the tasks. There are scenarios where we could have this run on a schedule, maybe every day at 5 p.m., grab all of the tasks and add them to the task database. The reason I'm adding the marking a meeting as done is number one, especially with teams, there might be some post-meeting notes or summarizing that team members are doing, or we just want to give the summary a quick review before marking it as done. So not necessary, but in my case, in the scenario that a meeting is booked and it hasn't run the automation to automatically tie it to a specific project or area, that gives me one last opportunity to fill in those relations before getting the tasks. So something to keep in mind there. If you're working with team members and you want to give them the ability to see the agent or to edit it, if we go into share, we can select a teammate. This dropdown looks slightly differently than if we're sharing a page or a database. In this case, you can give them full access. They can view it and interact with it, use the agent, or they can make edits. So in this case, we'll say Harper can edit this. And that means that this agent will also show up in their sidebar. So we'll click invite here. Great. Before we run this, I'm just going to change the name of this so we don't get confused. I'm just going to say get tasks from meetings, and we're going to update this to little puzzle piece. Good. All right. So back in our meeting notes, we have our summary here. If I haven't filled in the related project or client, I'm going to do that there. But otherwise, I'm just going to mark this meeting as done to see what happens next. If we go back to our custom agent, it's already starting to run. Again, marking it as done triggered this agent to start running and to start getting tasks. If I open this, we could get details as to what exactly is happening and what the agent is doing. So in this case, it's going through the transcript, meeting notes, and hopefully getting our tasks in our task database. So we'll give that a moment, just make sure that it runs successfully. It looks like it finished, so we're just gonna expand this to see what it did. It added 5 tasks and noted that some of these team members were not in the workspace, so they were left unassigned. And if we go back into our meeting page, if we scroll all the way down to the linked view of our task database, we can now see that those tasks are there. They have a due date of the following week. So let me just check that worked well. So if we said the meeting's on the 25th, they're due on the 4th. So that's correct. And if I open any one of these, I could see here for the tasks that were assigned to me, it did tag me as the assignee. So that worked pretty well. Now, if you're on a team, you may want to bake into the process just quickly reviewing these tasks, making sure that they're actually things that we need to track or can't just quickly check off a list. But one other thing we want to quickly check for is opening these to make sure that the client's tied to it and then also the related project. This means that if we have our tasks grouped by project, we're making sure that these tasks show up. Now we're going to make one quick change to how the agent is running just so that everybody's kept up to speed with when some updates are created by an agent, the right team members get notified and then it could jump straight into that specific page or pages. We're actually going to ask AI to make this update for us. So I'm going to go into get tasks from meetings. Let's close out the sidebar. And we're just going to say, update the instructions page to include a step to notify attendees in the meeting. So we're going to see if it gets the instructions page, makes that update, and then we're going to kind of rerun it just to make sure that we get that notification going. So it looks like we got some changes. Let me click into here to open, and then we can highlight post-creation notify attendees. So it's just one quick example of as we're getting custom agents running, what's likely to happen is we're going to find ways to further optimize it or instructions that we may need to function differently. So rather than just going into the page and updating it as if we would an SOP, we could just ask the chat if it has edit access, it could go in, make some changes, and then show you exactly where those changes are. So if there's anything that's off, we can kind of backtrack and undo it. So now that's in there, let's close this and see if this works. I'm gonna click done for this meeting on the 12th, and then let's go to our custom agent. Let's make sure that's running automatically. So you can see here it's waiting and then should start running. It looks like that finished. So we're gonna go to our notifications. And if I go here to the very top, I can see what meeting this is related to. And then if I open that, it's giving us the meeting page. And then lastly, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, I can see all of my new tasks. So to recap, when we set up our instructions pages and reference them in the custom agent instructions, that just kind of makes it easier to kind of keep up to date and to have everything in one place. If you're using verification, if you're on business or enterprise, that'll also help get notified when things may or may not be out of date. But if you want to grab the get tasks from meetings instructions page, I'll have a link for that in the description so you can hopefully customize it, make it work for you. And if you want to keep up to date with other use cases for custom agents or Notion AI or Notion in general, you can subscribe to the channel or check out our newsletter called Superwork. It's a mix of practical workflows for creators, teams, startups. And as we share more guides and resources and templates, you'll be the first to get them. And then last thing, just curious, if you want me to do a deep dive on building custom agents step by step, drop a comment below and let me know. Otherwise, see you in the next one. Cheers.